Well, in a familiar scene, she looks over and brushes birdseed off of his shoulder, and he looks back and offers a smile as he wipes his sweaty hands on his rented pants. And they're driving along, dragging aluminum cans behind them, and she's thinking back over the last 4 hours that just happened too quickly. And he's thinking ahead about the next 4 hours. They pull into the parking lot, and he takes her hand and walks her to the room and picks her up and carries her across the threshold. And so it begins. Some of you look forward to that night. Some of you perhaps are looking back on that night. And into this deeply personal space comes this book of the Bible you all have been studying together with the name Song of Solomon. It's a book that's so intimate that in ancient times, the Hebrew boys weren't allowed to read this until they reached adulthood. Now, we're not going to talk explicitly about sex this morning. You can deal with your relief or disappointment, but this book records, you might be surprised to hear, the first French kiss in history. All right, so take that, France, right? We all love the beginning of a love story. We love to sit and watch what happens in that early stage of love. But Solomon is special in that we not only get to see that, but we get to see sort of love's enduring maturity over time as this couple grows older together. In a couple months, I'm going to have a birthday, which I'm going to enter another decade, which that's always really fun. My wife and I just celebrated 47 years of marriage. Now, you notice which one we applauded, right? Turning 7 decades old, there's no big deal. All you have to do is just not die, right? But almost 5 years of a marriage together, we know there's a story there. This couple in Song of Solomon has their own story, as you've been looking at. It begins as they've noticed each other, and particularly they noticed the character of one another, and they were drawn and began to experience this chemistry that they had together. And through their courtship, they sort of rounded this corner and made this commitment to one another, and then stepped into the covenant of marriage with one another. And today we're going to head to the last chapter of Song of Solomon as I get to sort of close out this series for you. And in it, we see this couple growing old together. Their hair is turning gray, and in the man's case, turning loose. Enter the guest speaker. And in verse 5 of chapter 8, we read these words. Who is this coming up from the desert, leaning on her lover? So it's actually their friends that take note. They're coming back from a date, let's say, and the friends see them and they go, wow, don't those two look great? Don't they look wonderful? And in particular, they're noticing the woman. This couple has so nurtured and their relationship. They've created the safety. They've created the security. They've brought value to one another in such a way that when they see this woman, they say, look at her. She looks fabulous. She looks transformed. She's gorgeous. And in response, the woman talks about the love that they built that has endured. Look at verse 5, second part of it. Under the apple tree, I roused you. There your mother conceived you. There she who was in labor gave you birth. Now, trees are interesting in the Bible. If you see fruit trees, in particular apple trees, it's a reference to sexual intimacy. So she's sort of saying, hey, I got your attention under that apple tree. Then she says, place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death. Daniel, a couple weeks ago, talked about this idea of a seal. It's a family insignia. She is is saying there was a sense of belonging I feel with you. You have me in your heart, and your arm is for me. And for love is as strong as death. It's jealousy, unyielding as the grave. In other words, it's permanent. It's lasting. And then she says, and it burns like the mighty flame. Come on, let's go. She's talking about, I still want you. There's still passion in our relationship. Now, if I were to ask you the number one cause for marital failure or divorce, I wonder what you'd say. Anybody want to take a venture at that? There it is, money. It might surprise some of you if you've never heard that before, but that sort of stood the test of time, that money is a major reason for marriages breaking up. Not lack of money even, it's just a lack of agreement on that. And then second is, of course, unfaithfulness. Now, these get a lot of focus, and they should get a lot of focus in terms of their importance. But I want to propose a greater threat to you and to your marriage. Most marriages don't go up in smoke. They die one bite at a time. So if I were to tell you that more structures are destroyed by termites every year than are destroyed by fire, and you hadn't heard that before, you might go, especially living in California, we'd say, wow, is that right? But when we think about it, we realize it's true. Why? Because these termites are they're everywhere, and they're incessant, and they don't sleep, and they continue to gnaw away at structures. I'm convinced that some little pests in our marriages are often the most significant to be contended with. Slow leaks, not blowouts. In fact, early in this relationship, if you'll remember, the man, as he's beginning to recognize something special is happening in this relationship with this woman, he turns to her and he says in chapter 2, verse 14, "My dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places on the mountainside, show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom." Catch the foxes. The foxes would tend to just sort of stalk vineyards until the fruit would become, just before it became ripe, and then they would come in and they would strip the vineyards. In one of my news feeds this week, I got a story of a fox that sort of snuck into a picnic. I don't know if you all saw that, but when the back was turned, he kind of came into it and took a bite out of this picnic and got as many hot dogs in his mouth as he possibly could. The pests that are always present, ready to devour. Little foxes destroy vineyards, little habits can destroy marriages. This couple that overlooks this is at risk. So what are some of the pests? So for a moment here, here's what I want to do this morning. I want to look at 3 pests for your consideration, and then I want to come back and look at sort of 3 ways we can push back on that. 3 things that we can keep aware of to sustain a healthy marriage. So I'm going to go to Ephesians 5 to look at the pests. And in this chapter, there are some of the most famous verses that we have on a man and a woman's relationship. You might hear them often in weddings, where it talks about what the man's focus should be and what the woman's focus should be. But now, after all these years that I've been married, I become convinced that the verses that precede these famous verses on marriage are actually intended to be applied in particular towards marriage. The instruction is given in Ephesians 5:15, "Be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise." Here's the first pest: confusion. I think this is speaking to the condition in which we sort of lose our focus that we initially had in our marriage. We wander from a sense of clarity we had for what we wanted our marriages to be. Guys, when you first started dating her, you carried her books, and then you carried her suitcase, and then you carried furniture, maybe as she moved into an apartment, and then you carried her across the threshold, and somewhere after that, you develop back problems, right? You're sitting on the couch watching the game, and she comes in and says, honey, I'd like to move the couch. And you say, can you wait till halftime, and I'll move to the recliner, right? There's a sense where we sort of wander from that initial focus. All relationships have in them an inertia towards erosion. They just do. Friendships, marriage, it has to be worked at. And it comes, I guess, in part from an incessant need to take care of ourselves, right? That me first mentality that we fight and will fight all of our lives. But I think it also comes from the growing complexity that happens alongside marriages, especially in relationship to interpersonal relationships. You first get married, it's just the two of you, uncomplicated. You have a child, and now there are 3 relationships to be supervised. You have 2 children, and now there are 6 relationships that are going on at any given time. If you're in a life situation where you're caring for an ailing parent, as a wife, as a woman, you could be tempted to wonder, who am I? Right? Am I a cook? Am I a chauffeur? Am I a nurse? Am I a mistress? Who am I supposed to be? Now, I have some epic fails in this area with this pest. My wife's not with me this morning, but she's watching online, and she's nodding right about now. When confusion reigns, we sort of lose the point. So here's what I had to do early on. My wife, I don't think it's a part of her story. She lost her father when she was 6 years old. And so I got a hold of a picture of her when she was 6 years old, and I put it on the dashboard of my car so that I would remember what was so compelling to me as a young man when we first got married was that this woman could experience a home, a happy home, that she could be loved and cared for over against the backdrop of what is her life. That's what we all care about in one another when we come to this point. But when we get confused, we lose that point. We lose our focus. Verse 15 gives us another pest. Making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. This is the pest of distraction. Where the pest of confusion goes after our focus, the pest of distraction goes after our time. Making the most carries with it the idea of looking at our ambitions, recognizing ourselves for who they are, and being willing to pay attention to that. Some of you may have heard of the Enneagram. It's an assessment tool that kind of helps you get to know your personality, and you get given your one of 9 numbers that is you. And I know some of you, I can see it in your eyes because it used to be me. You're rolling your eyes like this, some kind of Christian astrology or something like this, and you say, I won't be put in a box. To which I say, you're either a 1 or a 4. I'm a 3. And we are the people you hate to play board games with. We are the ones who can turn an evening of fun into a Hunger Games style death. We are obsessed with not just winning, but with the destruction of the competition. Now, when I'm honest in evaluating myself over against my marriage as a husband, I have to acknowledge there are times where my orientation has been to smuggle in blind ambition alongside my work, alongside my calling, alongside the things that I think are important in my life. And as a result, that's distracted me. Distraction invariably leads to priorities choosing you, not the other way around. Here's the third, the pest of foolishness. In verse 17, it says, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Now, the word foolish is different than the word unwise. This might be helpful for us to understand. It's even stronger. It's the idea of senseless folly. We might say, don't be thick. That's what's going on here. It carries the idea of, hey, pay attention. Start paying attention. And applied to marriage, this verse is calling us to quit being inconsiderate towards one another. Notice where that's happening. When this pest is at work, it prompts things like, I'm not sure what the needs of my mate are right now. I'm out of touch. You can't remember the last time you asked them a question that was just open-ended, and then you just sat and you listened as they talked. Or the last time you intentionally compelled yourself to do less talking, more listening. Or maybe the last time you asked on your own someone that's deeper into marriage than you are for some of the things that have helped them succeed in their marriage. Confusion brings loss of focus. Distraction, loss of time. Foolishness, loss of awareness. And what happens is we end up sort of drifting through our marriages as these pests just keep taking bite after bite, day after day. Now, marriage is one of the most unbelievable things that we get to experience on this earth. It's not the only thing, but it's a really, really special thing that God has offered. And some of you are really working hard at it, harder than you thought you were going to have to work. And it might be helpful for us to take a moment, and here's how I got to what I'm going to say here in a moment. I'm working on this message, sitting at our kitchen table, and I get a call from one of our children. I'm going to try to keep even the gender out of my story about it so I can protect them. But anyway, this child called me and said, wanted to talk about a difficult situation they were going through in their marriage. Now, while I'm working on this talk, it wasn't a fire, it was an incessant pest that keeps showing up for them. And so what follows is a little bit better organized version of what I tried to say to my child who called this week. And in order for us to hear this, we're going to have to be willing to get recalibrated a little bit maybe, and it's going to take some humility. But what I particularly like as a framework for this is what one author has used in the analogy of a place in certain stores where there are sections of merchandise that are offered for a reduced price. And if it's in a clothing store, it's going to be because there's something wrong, right, with the article of clothing. And it's going to be marked, flawed, irregular, as is, whatever they might put on that store. So here's the first recalibration. A person comes flawed. Everybody has a zipper that won't zip, a button that won't button, a stain that won't come out. And we might reveal our flaws early on, but many of us, you have to spend more time with us before you get to see what they are, before they show up. But they will show up. And when they do, don't think you get to return them, right? Think for a second about someone in your life that you know really well, whether you're married, not married, but you know them really well. And at this point, your love includes the reality that they are flawed. They come with that tag. It may be a volcanic temper. It may be a streak of deception. They may have a tendency towards a cruel tongue. But you know that if you want a relationship with them, there's only one way they come, and that's flawed. Here's a second. We are all complicated. We're tempted to live under the notion that somewhere out there are people who are simple, like us. Normal, right? And we hang on to this illusion that people should not be complicated like they are, and as a result, then, we enter an endless attempt to fix them or to try to control the person in front of us. One of the greatest marks of maturity is to accept the fact that everyone comes both flawed and complicated. Now, take it out of marriage for a minute and just think about community. Think about what you're building here. I know you guys are starting your small groups, and some of you are considering getting into small groups, which I highly recommend, even though it was hard for me. I don't naturally like to do that kind of stuff. But think about community for just a second. A guy by the name of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who writes about community, which might surprise you that he's writing about that. And he says, in essence, when people enter into community and when they have a dream or an ideal for community that is what it should look like, that very ideal of community has the potential to threaten community itself. Here's his words. Those who love their dream of Christian community more than Christian community itself become destroyers of that Christian community, even though their personal intentions may be ever so honest, earnest, and sacrificial. See, we try to separate the world into kind of straightforward ways, healthy people, difficult people. Scripture makes it clear we're all complicated. Isaiah 53:6, for we all like sheep have gone astray. Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It makes us complicated. We're broken. And we have the capacity for that brokenness to show itself. Just like glass can be shattered, nitroglycerin can explode, we know in our hearts that we are presupposed to lie and to hide alongside our complications. Every one of us pretends to be healthier, pretends to be kinder than we really are. It's our attempt to manage our image, right? Every once in a while we hear a story of some famous author that gets in trouble for plagiarism, or a politician whose life blows up over a sexual scandal, or a pastor who's caught in a compromise. And what's surprising is not that those kind of things happen. What's surprising is people's reaction to what happens. Can you believe it? And they just seem so normal. As if you and I would be incapable of such behavior. We're not only flawed and complicated, here's the third one. Everybody draws blood. I love the picture of a porcupine for this one. I didn't know this until recently, that a porcupine is a member of the rodent family. Typically has about 30,000 quills, right, that they carry around in their body. Each one of them can be driven into an enemy, and then as I understand it, the enemy's body heat causes the barb to expand and to bed it even deeper. Can be incredibly painful and harmful, and even can kill an enemy. If you think about the porcupine's method for relating, there's really only two ways he can go about it, or she can go about it, right? You either withdraw or you attack. He either goes for his hole or he releases the quills. Now, I imagine porcupines want to find love, right? I imagine they want to be close. Turns out that's kind of risky business for them. How do you get close without getting hurt or hurting another? Now, some of you in this room say, no, I'd rather think of myself as an otter, or I'm a golden retriever, right? No, you're a porcupine. All of us have our set of quills that come from pain in our life, from trauma in our past, and we have the capability to hurt with our words, to show contempt, to be judgmental, to be angry. Some hide theirs better than others. You got to get to know me, I think, probably, to get to know what my quills are, but they're there, and they'll wound, and they'll fester, and they'll even kill. And yet all of us, we want to get close, right? We still want to make friends and be in community, and we want to go on dates, and we want to get married, and we want to have children. But close relationships draw blood. Comes with the territory. Take a look at this verse with me. Ephesians 4:7. We read, but to each one of us, grace has been given. Now you see what that verse is doing, right? You see how it's pointing us in a direction. It begs for completion. Because for each one of us, grace has been given. We ought to be able to offer it ourselves. Great marriages that stand the test of time are not built on flawless people. They're not even built on people that are necessarily all that compatible. They're built on our ability to sustain grace together. To receive it, knowing we need it, and to give it. Here's the hope of marriage. Two deeply flawed people covered by the grace of God, learning over time to hold each other without drawing blood. That is holy work. And when Christ and His grace are welcomed into the center of our relationship, little foxes don't stand a chance devouring our vineyards. Would you bow your heads with me? Heavenly Father, giver of grace, thank you. Thank you for the delight of marriage. Not just the duties and the responsibilities, but the blessings. As husbands, help us to love our wives with tenderness and gentleness and understanding. As wives, help us to love our husband with compassion and kindness. Forgive us our confusion and our distraction and our foolishness, Lord. Blot out our transgressions. And lead us in the paths of righteousness. For your name's sake we pray. Amen.